Greetings and a warm welcome to another lesson for computer studies. So remember from our previous lesson, we talked about evolution of computers, which was merely a revision uh, of what we should have covered in grade 8 and grade 9. So this is basically about how computers have evolved since the inception or since the invention of electricity in the 20th century, how computers have evolved up to the computers that we have today. So basically where computers came from, and now we are now in the 5th generation of computers, which are the computers of today as well as computers for the future. Right, so today we are going to start on a new topic, uh, data communication and networks, and we are going to cover this topic in probably the next 3 or 4 lessons, trying to break it down so that we can understand it easier. So let's get on with it. Right, data communication and network is our topic for today. Remember, if you have any questions for any of my lessons, you can always call me, or you can text me, WhatsApp, or anything on that number on the screen. You can also email me as well if you require any clarification over my lessons. Right, so data communication and networks, it's a very, very interesting topic. We are going to talk about probably things that you have encountered and things that you probably know. Okay, I'll start by defining the terms that are associated with data communication and networks. So the first thing that we obviously need to define is data communication itself. So basically, data communication is the transmission and receiving of coded data, for example, your text, voice, video, over a communication link between two or more computers, right? So it comes from the definition of communication. When we say communication is the transfer of information between two or more people. But when we talk of data communication, the keyword there being data, now you are transmitting a coded data. You are now transmitting a particular piece of information. So this can either be text, this can be voice, this can be video. So when you are transmitting it over a communication link, that becomes data communication. Right. The next term we're going to define is network. What is a network? Basically, a network is an interconnection of two or more computers or related equipment such as printers and fax machines. There are two basic categories of networks, right? So when we look of network, we're looking at an interconnection between two or more computers, or basically when we talk of related equipment, uh, that is a network. When you link two devices together or more, you are creating what is called a network. So we are going to talk about the categories of networks as we go along. Right, so the next thing that you're going to encounter is something called broadband. So basically, a broadband is a communication network that provides for a high quality and high speed voice, data, and video transmission, usually over a wireless network or over high bandwidth media like fiber optics or satellites. Or to make it simpler, what it means is a broadband is basically that which provides you with the link to transmit. Like for example, right now, if you're using your phone to send pictures or to send voice or to make phone calls, you are using what is called a broadband. And MTC is one example of a provider of a broadband. So what gives you the platform to send that data is what is called broadband. Right, I just thought these were basically just a few of many terms associated with networks that you're going to encounter as we talk about this subject, about this topic in particular. Right, now before we go on, we have already talked about what a network is when you connect two or more devices together. So before I get on to deeper into the topic, I want us to know the advantages of networking. And when I talk of the advantages of networking, I believe it will be easy for you to understand or to make sense of the advantages, and then from there we'll also build on to what it is after having known what are the advantages, why you would want to network, and we'll also talk about the disadvantages as well before we give the types of networks. Right. Number one, expensive peripheral like printers and scanners can be shared between users. So that's an advantage of networking. Things like printers, instead of in an organization, one person having their own printer, the company can opt to buy one printer or a few printers, and then these printers can be networked. So, which meaning many users can share a printer over a network. Another advantage really is that messages can be sent easily and faster between users, right? So if you are on a network, it becomes easier for you to send messages. That's an advantage of networking, right? Like right now, I am talking to you from using a video transmitted type of communication. So I can talk to you, and that's an advantage. I don't need to be where you are to communicate. So that's another advantage. Right, and then another advantage of networking is that it avoids duplication of information, as users can access the same file on the network. Here we are talking about a case where you are downloading files or you are working on files as a company. One document can be worked on by many people. Right, network software can be purchased cheaply than buying individual packages for each computer. Right, another issue why you would want to network is because software is very expensive. Right, instead of buying an individual their own software, a company can opt to buy one, and then these computers can share. Right, it is possible now to access data or programs from any terminal. For example, right now you are at home and we are at school, but you are able to access your work. So that's another very big advantage of networking. And then another one is that data and programs can be stored centrally, making it easier to maintain backup. It's another advantage of networking. And then we can also talk about users can be easily prevented from accessing files not intended to them, because when you centralize your work or your files, it's easy for you to lock them using passwords and the likes, instead of saying this person has got this file, this one has got the file. But if the file is at one place, it is easy for you to protect that file by putting passwords to restrict access. And then also networks allows sharing of files, software, and data held in computers. So that sharing of files, you can share files over a network, right? And then it also allows emails to be sent between users as another advantage of networking, right? So when you look at that, I believe it's now when you say advantages of networking, you can now easily relate as to what we mean by networking. When we share resources, when you connect devices together, what do we gather? Now let's also talk about the disadvantages of networking. Like the disadvantages of networking always start with costs, right? Because for you to be able to network, you require a lot of equipment, and this can be very, very expensive, right? So it becomes an expensive process to do, especially the initial setting up of a network. right? And then security of data can be a problem due to hacking. But whilst we can say it's easy for you to access your files even from remote areas, but it's also easily hacked. When you talk of hacking, someone can hack through your systems, and then you can actually lose your data. And then wiring can be expensive, both to buy and to install. Wiring can be sunk on the ground to avoid trailing cables. Right, so it's a very, very long process for you to have a network, and it's a very, very expensive exercise. And I'm speaking of which you probably have seen how those people from MTC, they'll be digging trenches to put their network wiring underground. So you can imagine the exercise. It's very long. Right, another disadvantage is if a server breaks down, the whole network become unusable. Right, you ever tried to access a document and then you can't? That's the disadvantage. Yeah, we have encountered here at school. Say you're trying to log onto the system to access your work. Once the server is down, nothing, you can't use anything, you can't do anything. So those are some of the disadvantages. And then otherwise, networks need very experienced network managers who will be highly paid to keep the network running. Now, for you to run a network, it's an expensive exercise. You need skilled workers. It's not anyone who can come in and say, I'm running a network, because there are a lot of things that are involved in networking. So those are some. And then we talk of issue of viruses. On a network, you can easily spread computer viruses. If one flash or one computer is infected, you can easily infect a whole lot of other computers on the same network. Right, now let's look at the types of computer networks that we have. So we're going to narrow them down to four, but there are so many different types. But for our scope, or according to our syllabus, we'll be required to know these four. Right, these four are starting with the most important one, or the most popular one, the local area network, which is abbreviated as LAN. And then we also have the wide area network, which is abbreviated as WAN. And then we've got the metropolitan area network, abbreviated as MAN. And then the last one, which is the personal area network, which is abbreviated as PAN. Right. Of these four, what is very, very important for you to know are the ones which are listed at the bottom. This one, the LAN, as well as the WAN. The LAN is the most popular and most common type of a network, whilst the WAN is the widest or the biggest, because what really differentiates those four in terms of size, in terms of the distance they serve. Right? For example, a local area network is usually confined to a building, an office, or a house. So it's confined to a very, very specific geographical area. And then when you talk of MAN, it's about size. It can occupy range from city to city. And then WAN is international. There is no limit. That is where we see our internet. And then PAN, it's a personal area network, which covers only within a person there. Now let's talk about the first one, which is the local area network. So what it is, a local area network is a network confined in a single room, building, or campus, and usually linked directly by cables or sometimes wireless. So key factor about a local area network is that it is confined to a building, it is confined to rooms or campus. When we talk about campus, for example, our own Sunshine Private College, it's a campus because it compasses so many different buildings. So whatever connection that is there is a local area network, right? So Basically, what comprises a local area network, we'll talk about servers, usually file and print servers. There are also terminals, which are actually the computers, and there are a lot of cables as well that connects these devices. And then we talk of network cards, routers and hubs, as well as network software. We will talk about these ones in detail when we talk about equipment that are required to create networks. So, and then what characteristics of a LAN? So the characteristics of a LAN, the first one is that it is confined to a very small geographical area. And then data transfer on a LAN is usually of very, very high speed. And then it is usually managed by the company using that LAN. So you see that here at Sunshine, we service our own LAN. Every company will be responsible for managing their own network. That's what it means. And then I decided to just give you a diagram that is going to describe for you a network, a local area network. So here I've got, I'll use my mouse pointer, right? Here I've got these computers, right? They are connecting here to a switch, and then this switch is connecting a server, and then here you probably have a router, and then this router is connecting other computers, and it can also connect a Wi-Fi, and then from that Wi-Fi you can have your phones, your laptops and smartphones connecting. So what it means is that you can have such a connection confined to a building or to a workplace. Like you can also have a similar setup of this nature at home. Like this is a simple diagram showing the network what most of you will be using. So here in the middle we have got a wireless or Wi-Fi router. Here the popular one is what you call the Fritzbox, which most of you use. So that can actually connect your laptop, your PCs, and then it can also distribute Wi-Fi to your video games, your laptops, your phones, and your tablets. So that connection is limited to a very, very specific geographical area. That is what is called a LAN. So I hope by now you understand what you mean by a local area network, confined to either a building or a campus or a house or an office area. In summary, we could say LANs are used in areas such as schools where, for example, an accountant, secretary, principal, HODs will have their computers linked together. That's an example. And then computers in a computer laboratory linked together to form a network. That's another example of a local area network. If you go to the computer lab, you'll see computers are linked together. That's another good example of a local area network. And then a college or university may also have a LAN linking administration and various offices for that particular campus. Is another example of a LAN. Now let's go to wide area network. A wide area network is basically a network that is spread over a wider geographical area ranging from town or country to the entire world. A WAN is sometimes called LHN, which is short for long haul network. So basically what that means is that a WAN is not limited to only a building. A WAN expands to as long as to the whole world, meaning to say a computer here in Namibia can be connected to a computer in the United States, to a computer in Australia, or wherever. So when you have that type of a connection, we call it the wide area network. Right? It's also known as an LHN, not very popular name, but in the event that you're asked what an LHN stands for, it's long haul network. So what makes up a WAN? Right, we have got file and print servers with computers for connection. Usually require a modem. We also require a telephone, a network cards, as well as network software. These are usually the requirements that you need in order to have a wide area network connection. But we will talk about this when we talk about equipment required to build up a network. Right? But what are the characteristics of a WAN? Number one, it is that the WAN is spread over a wider geographical area. So unlike the LAN, where we say it is confined to a very, very small geographical area, the WAN can spread over from a building to the entire world, right? And also another key is that WAN transmits data at much lower speed than LAN, in terms of speed, right? And then it is usually an interconnection of LANs, right? When you talk about WAN, we are connecting now LANs. We've got a LAN here, another LAN. When you connect them, that's what usually forms. I'll demonstrate that one. At times, usually a WAN, it requires a third-party company, especially telecommunications companies, to manage. Remember, we said a LAN, it's usually managed by, the company that is using that LAN usually manages their network. But with this one, because it's a wider range, the other person is Namibia, and the other company, the branch is in probably another branch is in United States. Now to connect that will require the use of telecommunications company. That's where companies like MTC come into play. This is where companies like Telecom come into play, where MTN and the likes, their job is to make those connections. Right. Here's an example of what a WAN is. So typical. So we are saying you've got a LAN, for example, you say LAN A, LAN 1. Give an example, say it's a bank, FNB. FNB has a branch in Windhoek, it has a branch in Walvis Bay, it has a branch in Rundu. So these LANs can represent different branches of the company. But that company may need to connect those in order to have one typical network. So to connect that, that's what makes a LAN. So when you connect, that's what makes a WAN, pardon me. So now we are saying your branch in South Africa, your branch in Namibia, your branch in Egypt, your branch in America, your branch in UK. When you put them together, they form what is called a wide area. So I can represent that using another diagram, another example there. We are saying you can have a headquarters, and then you can have regional offices. You can have data centers in other towns, and then you can have offices. And when you link these things or these companies together, they form what is called a wide area network. And then I hope it's still clear. Now let's just summarize what a wide area network. So a WAN basically are used by large companies with many branches within different towns and cities. For example, banks, credit shops like Edgar's, Truworths, or Jet, right? They make use of these types of networks. That's why you would realize you can buy clothes on credit at Jet here in Windhoek. You can also buy using the same credit line. You can use it in Walvis Bay. You can use it in Rundu. You can use it in Katima. What makes that connection? It's the wide area network. Some can even use it in South Africa again. Right? And other companies are what are called multinational companies with branches in different countries. They also use this type of networks. You look at your companies like Coca-Cola, you also Unilever, those ones who produce Colgate. Colgate is produced in Namibia. It is also produced in countries like Zambia. It's also produced in South Africa. So these companies may need to link each center accordingly to have that connection. That's where we talk again of the wide area network. So note, a LAN is within one setting, and then a WAN when you connect these different settings. But now you're doing it across cities, right? It expands from city to country right up to the entire world. It's also regarded as a WAN, right? So there's another one which is much smaller, but it's also it's much smaller, but it can also be counted. It's called a metropolitan area network. So these types of network are larger than LANs but smaller than WANs, right? And incorporate elements from both types of networks. MANs span an entire geographical area, typically a town or city, but sometimes a campus. Ownership and maintenance is handled by either a single person or a company. A local council, a large company is an example that we use this one, right? So a metropolitan is limited only to a city. So we are saying, for example, say the city council, or like for example the city of Windhoek may have these different branches across the city. The city police is one of them, and then the one council for water, electricity, and the like. So they can have different networks right across the city. So when you connect computers within the city, that forms a MAN, right? So a MAN is greater than a LAN, but less than a WAN. It's limited within a city. Right, and then the last one we're going to look at today is the personal area network. Right, by personal area network, this one is the smallest and the most basic type of node. A PAN is made up of wireless modem, computer, phones, printers, tablets, etc. It revolves around one person in one building. These types of networks are typically found in small offices or residences, are managed by one person or organization from a single device. Right, so I can demonstrate using a phone, right? This is a phone and a computer called a desktop computer, and then I also have a laptop which is recording me. If I am to connect these three devices together here, which means I'm now using, I could transfer a document from this phone into the computer or into the laptop. And so when you create such a network at a very, very small personal, then the keyword there is personal. It's managed by a person. So from the diagram there, you see you can have your phone, you can create a hotspot, and this phone can link your smart TV, can link your tablet, your earphones, your headsets, your mic, and the like. So when you create your own personal connection, it's called a personal area network. So you understand that this translates down to size. So that's basically it for this lesson. Remember, we have talked about the LAN, the WAN, the MAN, and the PAN. These are the different types of networks that we have. So just go on. So what we are going to do now is go and research further. Go on to Google and read further about this before we continue with the same topics in our next lesson. So for our next lesson, we are going to talk about the infrastructure that is required to build a network. So on our next lesson, we are going to focus on the infrastructure that you need in order to develop a network. And then after that, we'll also talk about network topology. And I'm just hoping after these 3 lessons, we should have completed the discussion on networks. And then after the topology, that's when I'm going to give you an assignment question that you will be required to answer. So until we meet again for our next lesson, remember we have got these 4 types of networks that you need to remember. See you.